Brooklyn, New York, September 15, 1930. The elevated train rumbles overhead on Saratoga Avenue, casting moving shadows across the sidewalk below. Under the steel girders, a small corner building glows with warm light from its windows. The painted sign reads Midnight Rose Candy Store, open 24 hours. Through the glass, children's penny candy jars line the shelves. Peppermint sticks, chocolate drops, and licorice whips fill mason jars arranged in neat rows. Behind the counter stands Rose Gold, 63 years old, 4 feet 11 inches tall, weighing approximately 110 pounds. Her grey hair is pulled back in a tight bun. She wears a simple black dress with a white apron tied around her waist. Her hands, weathered and small, move methodically as she counts the day's receipts. The store occupies the ground floor of a 3-story brick building at 779 Saratoga Avenue, corner of Livonia Avenue, in the Brownsville section of Brooklyn. The neighborhood teems with Eastern European Jewish immigrants, Italian families, and Irish dockworkers. Tenement buildings stretch for blocks in every direction. The unemployment rate in Brooklyn has reached 23%. At exactly midnight, the first man enters the store. Abraham Reles, 23 years old, stands 5 feet 2 inches tall, weighs 140 pounds. His black hair is slicked back with pomade. He wears a grey wool suit, pressed white shirt, and black Oxford shoes. His hands remain buried deep in his coat pockets. Rose Gold looks up from her register. "Good evening, Abe." "Evening, Mrs. Gold." The usual. She reaches beneath the counter and produces a chocolate malted milk. The glass mug is clean, the straw paper white and unmarked. Reles takes the drink and walks to the back of the store, where a row of 5 black rotary telephones hangs mounted on the wall. Each phone bears a different number: Mayfair 47894, Mayfair 47895, Mayfair 47896, Mayfair 47897. 3 more men enter within the next 15 minutes. Harry Strauss, known as Pittsburgh Phil, 21 years old, 6 feet tall, 170 pounds. His brown hair is parted on the left side. He orders black coffee, no sugar. Martin Goldstein, called Bugsy, 24 years old, 5 feet 8 inches, 160 pounds, requests a vanilla egg cream. Frank Abandando, the Dasher, 26 years old, 5 feet 9 inches, orders a root beer float. The men do not sit together. They position themselves at different corners of the small store. Pittsburgh Phil leans against the candy counter. Bugsy Goldstein stands near the magazine rack, flipping through a copy of Detective Stories magazine dated September 1930. The Dasher positions himself by the front window, watching Saratoga Avenue through the glass. Rose Gold moves between her customers with practiced efficiency. She does not engage in conversation beyond taking orders and making change. The cash register rings constantly. Mighty's 10 cents for coffee, 15 cents for malted milk, 20 cents for an egg cream. Each transaction is recorded in a small ledger book she keeps beneath the register. At 12:47 a.m., the telephone on the far left begins to ring. The sound cuts through the store like a blade. Reles walks to the phone, lifts the receiver. "Yeah." The conversation lasts 43 seconds. Reles nods twice, says "got it," and hangs up. He finishes his malted milk in 3 quick gulps, leaves a quarter on the counter, and exits the store. Pittsburgh Phil follows 30 seconds later, then Bugsy Goldstein, then the Dasher. The interval between their departures is precisely timed. Rose Gold clears the glasses, wipes down the counter, and returns to her newspaper. The store falls silent except for the elevated train passing overhead every 12 minutes. This scene repeats itself every night. The same men, the same drinks, the same telephones, the same precise choreography of entrance and exit. The neighbors consider the Midnight Rose a harmless neighborhood establishment. Local children spend their allowances on penny candy. Mothers send their sons to buy milk and bread. The elderly gather on warm evenings to discuss the day's events. What the neighborhood does not know is that the Midnight Rose Candy Store serves as the operational headquarters for the most lethal murder-for-hire organization in American history. The 5 telephones connect directly to the National Crime Syndicate, a coalition of Italian and Jewish organized crime families that has divided the United States into territories of influence. The National Crime Syndicate was formed in 1929 by Charles Lucky, Luciano Maialansky, Benjamin Bugsy Siegel, and Dutch Schultz. These men recognized that the traditional method of settling disputes through open warfare was destroying profits and attracting unwanted police attention. They devised a more efficient system, a professional assassination bureau that would eliminate problems with surgical precision. The Assassination Bureau received the name Murder Incorporated. Its primary function was to execute individuals marked for death by the Commission, the governing body of the National Crime Syndicate. The killers operated under strict rules. They never murdered anyone from their own neighborhood, they used no personal weapons, and they left no evidence connecting them to their victims. Louis Buchalter, known as Lepke, aged 33, runs the Jewish section of Murder Inc. Albert Anastasia, 38 years old, commands the Italian faction. Together they oversee a workforce of approximately 40 professional killers operating from coast to coast. The candy store provides perfect camouflage. Police officers walk past dozens of times each day without suspicion. Federal agents investigating organized crime focus their attention on nightclubs, restaurants, and gambling houses. They do not consider a neighborhood candy store worthy of surveillance. Rose Gold collects a monthly payment of $50 for allowing the use of her telephones and providing meeting space. She never asks questions about the men who gather in her store. She never listens to their telephone conversations. She maintains complete ignorance of their activities, a willful blindness that keeps her alive and keeps her store operational. The malted milk costs 15 cents. The phone calls determine who lives and who dies across the eastern United States. Brooklyn, New York. March 22, 1932. The telephone rings 4 times before AB Relays answers. The voice on the other end speaks for 90 seconds, providing 3 pieces of information, a name, an address, and a deadline. Relays writes nothing down. His memory holds every detail with mechanical precision. Understood, Reles says, and hangs up. The target is Morris Diamond, a garment worker who has been skimming money from union dues. The address is 1247 Blake Avenue, apartment 3B. The deadline is Thursday, March 24th, before 6 p.m. The fee is $1,500 paid in advance to a numbered account at the Bowery Savings Bank. Reslels signals Pittsburgh Phil with a subtle nod. The 2 men exit the candy store separately, walking in opposite directions on Saratoga Avenue. They reconvene 15 minutes later at the corner of Pitkin Avenue and Stone Avenue, 3 blocks from the Midnight Rose. The planning process follows established protocol. First, surveillance. Pittsburgh Phil spends the next 48 hours studying Morris Diamond's movements. Diamond leaves his apartment each morning at 7:30 a.m., pulls 4 blocks to the BMT subway station, and takes the train to the Garment District in Manhattan. He returns home each evening at 6:45 p.m., stopping at Goldstein's Delicatessen to purchase dinner. Diamond is 34 years old, 5 feet 6 inches tall, weighs 150 pounds. He has brown hair, wears wire-rimmed glasses, and walks with a slight limp from a childhood injury. He lives alone. His apartment is on the 3rd floor of a 4-story brick building. The front door is unlocked during the day. The hallway is dimly lit. The staircase creaks on the 5th and 9th steps. Pittsburgh Phil maps every detail of Diamond's routine. He times the walk from subway station to apartment 11 minutes and 30 seconds. He identifies potential witnesses. Mrs. Kowalski in apartment 2AA owns a small dog that barks at strangers. Petrov in apartment 1C works night shifts and sleeps during the day. The building superintendent, Tony Castellano, drinks heavily and rarely leaves his basement apartment. On Thursday, March 24th at 4:30 p.m., Pittsburgh Phil and Reles position themselves in the lobby of 1247 Blake Avenue. Phil carries a canvas tool bag containing 2 ice picks, a blackjack, and a length of rope. The ice picks were purchased at different hardware stores using false names. The tools leave no ballistic evidence, make minimal noise, and cause death through internal bleeding. At 6:47 p.m., Morris Diamond enters the building lobby. He carries a paper bag from Goldstein's Delicatessen and a rolled newspaper under his left arm. He does not notice the two men standing in the shadows near the mailboxes. Diamond climbs the stairs to the third floor. His footsteps echo in the narrow hallway. He reaches apartment 3B, inserts his key into the lock, and turns the handle. Pittsburgh Phil and Relez appear behind him simultaneously. Phil's left hand covers Diamond's mouth. His right hand drives the first ice pick between the third and fourth ribs, puncturing the left lung. Diamond's body goes rigid. The second thrust penetrates the liver. Diamond collapses forward into his apartment. The entire assault lasts 18 seconds. The killers drag Diamond's body inside and close the door. They arrange the scene to suggest a robbery gone wrong. They scatter papers across the floor, empty bureau drawers, and steal $43 from Diamond's wallet. They leave the front door slightly ajar to suggest hasty departure. Pittsburgh Phil and Relez exit the building through the rear courtyard. They dispose of the ice picks in separate storm drains 8 blocks apart. Their bloody clothing is burned in a metal drum behind an abandoned warehouse on Livonia Avenue. Morris Diamond's body is discovered the following morning by Mrs. Kowalski when she investigates the smell coming from the hallway. The Brooklyn police classify the case as a burglary homicide. Detective Lieutenant James Murphy leads the investigation. He interviews 12 neighbors, finds no witnesses, and closes the case after 6 weeks. This systematic process repeats itself throughout 1932. The telephones at the Midnight Rose ring with increasing frequency, names, addresses, deadlines. Each assignment is executed with identical precision. The killers vary their methods: strangulation, stabbing, blunt force trauma, occasionally firearms, but never deviate from their operational security procedures. The Murder Inc. roster expands to meet growing demand. New recruits include Ali Tannenbaum, known as TikTok, 22 years old, a specialist in automobile accidents; Seymour Magoon, the Blue Jaw, 25 years old, expert in making bodies disappear; Irving Cohen, Kennedals, 23 years old, surveillance and intelligence gathering. Each killer receives a base salary of $75 per week, paid regardless of assignments. Additional payments range from $500 to $5,000 per contract, depending on the target's importance and the difficulty of access. The money is distributed through Rose Gold, who maintains a safe behind the candy counter containing up to $20,000 in cash. The National Crime Syndicate feeds the Midnight Rose with contracts from across the country: a Chicago numbers runner who cheated his bosses, a Detroit bootlegger selling watered whiskey, a Philadelphia loan shark skimming interest payments. The killers travel by train, bus, and automobile to fulfill contracts in cities they have never visited, eliminating people they have never met. By December 1932, Murder Inc. has completed 87 confirmed kills. The true number may exceed 120, as some bodies are never found and some deaths are staged to appear accidental. The organization operates with the efficiency of a legitimate business corporation, maintaining detailed records, established procedures, and quality control measures. The Midnight Rose Candy Store serves as corporate headquarters, personnel office, and communications center. Rose Gold functions as secretary, accountant, and office manager. The 5 telephones ring day and night, carrying orders that transform the corner candy store into the deadliest address in America. Brooklyn, New York, May 23, 1940. The half moon hangs over Brownsville as police sirens wail through the narrow streets. Detective Captain Frank Bowles leads a convoy of 8 patrol cars down Saratoga Avenue. The vehicles brake simultaneously in front of the Midnight Rose Candy Store. 18 officers emerge, weapons drawn, surrounding the building. Inside the store, A.B. Relez sits at his usual position near the telephones. He sips a chocolate malted milk while reading the Brooklyn Eagle sports section. Pittsburgh Phil Strauss leans against the candy counter, counting a roll of $20 bills. Bugsy Goldstein and Frank Abandando play gin rummy at a small table near the magazine rack. The front door explodes inward. Police? Nobody move. The 4 men freeze. Relez slowly raises his hands above his head, the newspaper still clutched in his left fist. Pittsburgh Phil drops the money, bills scattering across the linoleum floor. Goldstein and Abandando abandon their card game, chairs scraping against the floor as they stand. Rose Gold emerges from behind the counter, her hands trembling. Officers, what is the meaning of this? Rose Gold, you're under arrest as an accessory to murder. Detective Bowles produces a warrant signed by Judge Samuel Libowitz. Abraham Relez, Harry Strauss, Martin Goldstein, Frank Abundando, you're all under arrest for the murders of George Rudnick, Irving Penn, and Walter Sage. The arrests are the culmination of a 3-year investigation led by Kings County District Attorney William O'Dwyer. The investigation began in February 1937, when the body of George Rudnick was discovered in a stolen automobile in the Canarsie section of Brooklyn. Rudnick had been strangled with a rope, his body showing signs of extensive torture. O'Dwyer's breakthrough came through Harry Rudolph, a small-time bookmaker who witnessed the Rudnick murder. Rudolph had been hiding in a warehouse when he saw Pittsburgh Phil and Bugsy Goldstein force Rudnick into a car. Fear kept Rudolph silent for 3 years, but mounting gambling debts finally forced him to negotiate with prosecutors. The investigation expanded when police connected the Rudnick murder to 36 other unsolved homicides. Assistant District Attorney Burton Turkus developed a comprehensive chart mapping the relationships between victims, suspects, and murder methods. The pattern revealed a professional organization operating with military precision. Surveillance of the Midnight Rose began in January 1940. Detectives Joseph Lynch and Patrick Kenny established observation posts in empty apartments across Saratoga Avenue. They photographed everyone entering and leaving the candy store, documenting times, dates, and conversations overheard through directional microphones. The evidence accumulated slowly. Telephone records showed calls from the Midnight Rose to numbers in Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia, and Cleveland. Financial records revealed cash payments to known criminals totaling over $300,000. Witnesses identified members of Murder, Inc. at crime scenes from New York to California. The Dragonet captures 12 defendants. Besides the 4 arrested at the candy store, police take into custody Ali Tannenbaum at his apartment on East New York Avenue, Seymour Magoon at a pool hall on Pitkin Avenue, and Irving Cohen outside a restaurant on Belmont Avenue. 5 additional suspects are arrested at various locations throughout Brooklyn. The prisoners are transported to the Raymond Street Jail, a fortress-like structure built in 1878. Each man is placed in solitary confinement to prevent communication and coordination of alibis. The cells measure 8 feet by 12 feet, contain a single cot, a wash basin, and a toilet. Guards provide meals through slots in the steel doors. District Attorney O'Dwyer begins interrogations immediately. He starts with the weakest link, Ali Tannenbaum, who has a wife and infant daughter. Tannenbaum initially refuses to cooperate, claiming ignorance of any criminal organization. After 72 hours of questioning, he breaks down and admits to participating in 7 murders. The confession opens the floodgates. Tannenbaum provides names, dates, locations, and methods for dozens of previously unsolved homicides. He describes the organizational structure of Murder, Inc., the payment system, and the role of the Midnight Rose as operational headquarters. But the most significant breakthrough comes from an unexpected source: A.B. Relez himself. On May 25, after 48 hours in solitary confinement, Relez requests a meeting with District Attorney O'Dwyer. The meeting takes place in a windowless room in the basement of the Kings County Courthouse. "I want to make a deal," Relez says. O'Dwyer leans back in his chair. "What kind of deal?" "Full immunity for complete cooperation. I'll give you everything: names, places, methods, the whole operation." "What do you want in return?" "Protection, a new identity, safe passage out of New York." O'Dwyer considers the offer. Relez's cooperation could solve hundreds of murders and destroy the National Crime Syndicate's enforcement arm. But it would also require releasing one of the most prolific killers in American history. "Give me a sample," O'Dwyer says, "something I can verify." Relez provides details about the murder of Morris Diamond in March 1932. He describes the surveillance, the planning, the execution, and the disposal of evidence. Police verify every detail against crime scene photographs and witness statements. The collaboration between Relez and prosecutors becomes the most comprehensive criminal cooperation in American legal history. Over the next 6 months, Rellers provides information about 85 murders committed by Murder Inc. He draws detailed maps of crime scenes, identifies weapons used, and names accomplices. His testimony reveals the full scope of the organization. Murder Inc. had killed between 400 and 1,000 people across the United States. The Midnight Rose candy store had served as the coordination center for the largest murder-for-hire operation in history. The revelations shock the American public. Newspapers run daily stories about the murder factory, hidden behind the innocent facade of a neighborhood candy store. Time magazine features the Midnight Rose on its cover with the headline Death Incorporated. Rose Gold is released after 3 days when prosecutors determine she had no knowledge of the murders. She returns to her candy store to find the windows broken, the interior vandalized, and threatening messages painted on the walls. Sing Sing Prison, Ossining, New York. June 12, 1941. The electric chair sits in the center of a sterile room painted institutional green. 24 witnesses occupy wooden chairs arranged in 3 rows facing the execution chamber. The smell of disinfectant cannot mask the underlying odor of fear and death that permeates the building. Harry Pittsburgh Phil Strauss walks through the steel door flanked by 2 guards. He wears prison-issued gray trousers, a white cotton shirt, and cloth slippers. His head has been shaved to accommodate the electrical connections. He shows no emotion as he surveys the witnesses, his eyes lingering on the reporters from the New York Times, Daily News, and Herald Tribune. "Any last words?" asks Warden Lewis Laws. Strauss shakes his head. The guards guide him to the chair and begin securing the leather straps around his wrists, ankles, and chest. The metal cap is lowered onto his head. A sponge soaked in salt water is placed between the cap and his scalp to improve electrical conductivity. At exactly 11:12 p.m., executioner Joseph Frantzell throws the switch. 2,000 volts of electricity surge through Strauss's body for 60 seconds. His body convulses violently against the restraints, then goes rigid. The current is reduced to 500 volts for an additional 60 seconds. At 11:14 p.m., the prison physician pronounces Harry Strauss dead. 15 minutes later, Martin Bugsy Goldstein follows the same path to the chair. His execution proceeds identically, 2,000 volts followed by 500 volts. Death pronounced at 11:31 p.m. The bodies are removed to the prison morgue where they await burial in the Potter's Field Cemetery adjacent to the prison grounds. The executions represent the culmination of the most successful prosecution of organized crime in American history. Between 1940 and 1944, District Attorney O'Dwyer and Assistant District Attorney Burton Turkus prosecute 12 members of Murder Inc. 7 receive death sentences, 4 receive life imprisonment, and 1 is acquitted due to insufficient evidence. The trials generate international media attention. R.B. Arillas testifies for the prosecution in 6 separate cases, providing detailed accounts of murders committed across the United States. His testimony is corroborated by physical evidence, witness statements, and confessions from other defendants. The most significant conviction involves Louis Lepke Buchalter, the head of Murder Inc. Buchalter is tried separately for the 1936 murder of Joseph Rosen, a candy store owner who threatened to expose labor racketeering operations. Russels testifies that Buchalter personally ordered the killing to prevent Rosen from cooperating with federal investigators. On March 4, 1944, Buchalter becomes the first and only major organized crime leader executed by the federal government. His death in the electric chair at Sing Sing effectively ends the era of Murder Inc. as a functioning organization. The prosecution's success depends entirely on Abe Riles's continued cooperation and testimony. He is held under constant guard at the Half Moon Hotel in Coney Island, a 7-story brick building overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. Police maintain 24-hour surveillance of his 6th-floor suite, with armed detectives stationed inside and outside his room. On November 12, 1941, at approximately 7 a.m., hotel staff discover Relather's body on the pavement outside the Half Moon Hotel. He has fallen from his 6th-floor window, suffering massive injuries including a crushed skull, broken neck, and multiple compound fractures. He is pronounced dead at Coney Island Hospital at 7:45 a.m. The official investigation concludes that Relies died attempting to escape police custody. Investigators theorize that he fashioned a rope from bedsheets and attempted to lower himself to the 5th floor, but the makeshift rope broke, causing him to fall to his death. The conclusion satisfies no one. Defense attorneys claim Relies was murdered to prevent further testimony. Police officials insist the death was accidental. Newspaper reporters suggest that organized crime figures paid guards to assassinate their former associate. The truth dies with Relies. His death effectively ends the murder intrigue, prosecutions, as remaining cases depend on his testimony for conviction. Several planned trials are abandoned due to insufficient evidence without his cooperation. The Midnight Rose candy store closes permanently in September 1941. Rose Gold, now 74 years old, faces constant harassment from neighborhood residents who view her as an accomplice to mass murder. She sells the building to a local family and moves to Florida, where she dies in obscurity in 1953. The building at 779 Saratoga Avenue changes hands multiple times over the following decades. It serves as a delicatessen, a grocery store, a check-cashing business, and a laundromat. Each business fails within 2 years, as customers avoid the location due to its notorious history. In 1987, the building is converted into a 24-hour convenience store called Fishtor Mini Market. The current owners are unaware of the building's history. They serve coffee and sandwiches to neighborhood residents, many of whom are also ignorant of the location's significance. The 5 telephones that once carried death sentences across the country have been removed. The candy jars that provided cover for the most prolific murder organization in American history are gone. The counter where Rose Gold counted her receipts while killers planned their next assignment has been replaced by modern equipment. But the building remains a monument to the transformation of organized crime from crude violence to systematic business operations. The Midnight Rose candy store proved that murder could be industrialized, standardized, and managed like any other corporate enterprise. The prosecution of Murder Inc. marks the beginning of federal law enforcement's war against organized crime. The investigative techniques developed by O'Dwyer and Turkus become the template for future cases against the mafia, labor racketeers, and other criminal organizations. The lessons learned in that Brooklyn candy store echo through decades of American law enforcement, proving that even the most carefully constructed criminal enterprises can be dismantled through patient investigation, witness cooperation, and prosecutorial determination. By 1944, the sweet smell of penny candy had been replaced by the bitter taste of justice served.